behalf of our lead sponsor, the Canadian Bible Society, and our event hosts, Imago and Intricity, welcome to Beauty and Brokenness, a unique opportunity for us to explore hope in and amongst the chaos and uncertainty. As a means of introduction, my name is Alana Walker Carpenter, and I have the privilege of being your host today. Whether you have a little faith, a lot of faith, or no faith at all, you belong here. For those of you who are engaged on social media, our hashtag is Beauty and Brokenness. That's Beauty and Brokenness. And for those of you who'd like to participate in our live Q&A, you can simply click on the right-hand side of your screen, and those questions will come directly to us. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our guest today, John Franklin, Executive Director of Imago, Scott Cameron, Chairman and CEO and founder of Cameron Stevens Mortgage Corporation, and Timothy Schmaltz, a well-known sculptor across Canada. Welcome, friends. Welcome, John, Scott, and Tim. John, this first question is to you. We are all in different stages of this recovery, geographically, personally, professionally, and spiritually. How does hope play a role in this next phase of recovery as we hopefully move out of this third wave?
Alana, I had to get unmuted there. I began by saying, before I was unmuted, that hope involves imagination. We can very easily focus on our immediate circumstances, and we're unable to see anything else. We're overwhelmed, and that's, I think, to some degree what's happened during the pandemic. Hope is a vantage point that moves us apart from where we are in the immediate circumstances. It's the ability to see the bigger picture. Our capacity to be innovative is an expression of hope. And hope is patient, but we always find a way. The artist, for example, does a virtual concert from their living room, or invites you on a tour of their studio, a virtual tour. The same can be true of business. They have to be innovative. Or church, or food banks. We respond in a creative way, and in so doing, we embody hope. So I think where we have to turn is to our innovative capacity in order to express our hopefulness. Hope is not about erasing the difficult realities around us, but transcending them. And I think we're able to do that through our actions.
Thanks, John. So hope involves imagination and innovation. And I think many of us have been creative during the pandemic as we've pivoted or seen others in their own creativity. Tim, as a teenager, you fell in love with visual arts. By the age of 19, you were sculpting and on your way to the Ontario College of Arts and Design. This has been a 30-year journey for you, bringing expression to things not seen. Hope, too, is unseen. Where can we find hope within your sculptures?
Well, I think that the whole practice of doing sculptures, one has to have, as important as clay and stone and their tools, the tool of hope. I like to kind of paraphrase Michelangelo. I think he said this, but he said he can already see the figure inside the block of stone, and all he has to do is chisel around it. Well, in a sense, and release this figure. In a sense, that is hope. That is having and holding the ideal, and in a sense, having faith in what is unseen to bring it into reality. Artists all the time have to have that. That's their compass, that's their principle. So I think that if you're a sculptor, yes, you have to develop your skill, but your physical skill, your skill of your hands, but also of your spirit, to have that hope, to have that optimism, that beautiful things are out there and they just need to be released.
Thank you, Tim, for that, enabling us to chisel out towards hope. Scott, in many ways, you embody our theme, beauty and brokenness. It was through the brokenness of a business partnership and the end of a marriage that enabled you to return back to your faith. You began to re explore your faith, notwithstanding, which is very beautiful, notwithstanding the brokenness, Scott. Describe to us what was significant in your journey home, your return to faith.
Well, I think thanks, Alana. I think that a couple of three sort of words. One is friendship, one is grace, and the other is sort of some undergirding intellectual foundations that I had and got from my parents and the way I was raised. I was raised in a Christian home, and that never leaves you. And I think I wandered off the journey for some period of time, but not totally off the journey. And I think it was friends and grace that really brought me back and really reinvigorated me in midlife. And I think in terms of the word hope, just very quickly, is coming back and just feeding off of what Tim said and wanting to be an artist from a young age. From a very young age, I wanted to be a business owner and a business entrepreneur. And it took a while. It really took until the last 20 years with the end of the business partnership I was in that I've really been able, I think in my own way, to fulfill the hope that I always had in terms of having my own business and fulfilling that. You know, I manage money now, and we take care of people, and we take care of looking after, giving them good risk-adjusted returns. And I guess I think I was made for this. I feel that from when I was, say, 17, that everything that I've done started back then, and that it's turned out the way God intended it to.
So that profound gift of friendship, that beautiful gift of grace, and that sense of hope. Thank you, Scott. John, there are actually a lot of skeptics in regards to hope, just as there are skeptics in regards to faith. Do you see a difference between hope and optimism?
Well, skeptics can easily confuse hope and optimism. And as I see it, optimism is simply a good, positive disposition towards life. An optimist is less concerned about changing anything and more concerned with simply looking on the bright side of things. So it's a matter of temperament, the optimist. It's not the result of reflection or thoughtfulness. There's a sense in which optimism is superficial, a superficial response to life. We may enjoy an optimistic spirit, but positive thinking is not a boat that can sustain us in the storm. Hope is much more than an expression of wishful thinking. And that's where the skeptics come in. They think, oh, it's just wishful thinking. It doesn't mean anything. What we hope for is not something impossible, but what we hope for is something that might be highly improbable. Hope is being described as a passion for the possible. So I think that's again how it's different from optimism. The hopeful spirit reflects on life and knows something of its destructive forces. It's an acquisition of the darkness. I mean, it's aware of the darkness, but it's not daunted by the darkness. Hopefulness is not daunted by darkness. It's not simply being positive as a way through life, but hope expresses the conviction that change and redemption are possible. Hope motivates us to an activity that seeks to make the world a better place.
I'd love that, John. And one of the things that really resonated me from those poignant thoughts was hope is more than wishful thinking. Hope is more than wishful thinking. Tim, as you know, the theme for our series has been beauty and brokenness, a journey to Easter. I know that this might be hard because you have had the privilege of sculpting many things, but of all the things you've sculpted, which one thing do you think embodies beauty? And which one thing do you think embodies brokenness?
Oh, it's hard. I've sculpted so many pieces, but I think both of those for Christian artwork are important. I think that I'm just changing your question a little bit, but I think that if if you're going to be an authentic Christian artist, you need to represent the brokenness and you need to represent the beauty. And I think that within Christian artwork, there perhaps has been an overemphasis on the beautiful designs, the gorgeous, with a complete vacuum of the brokenness and the suffering. And that's kind of an imbalance, a visual poor representation of what it's like to be Christian. If you look at the life of the saints, you will many times you will find that their grace comes at the most darkest time of their life. And I think that in order for Christianity to really mean something, it has to address the broken part of our humanity, or else it just, I like to call it cookies and cream. It becomes just Mary had a little lamb, and that's not our faith. Our faith is many-tiered, very dimensional. So I love to create a sculpture that shows some of the hardcore ideas of Christianity, but also show the beauty, to balance it out. I hope that is an answer in a sense, without addressing a specific sculpture.
No, I love that reframe, Tim. And I think it challenges us all to that visual imbalance that we have, that visual imbalance. Scott, as an owner of a business, you're leading a 40-person team. You have been relatively unscathed through COVID. You have really come away with minimal bumps and bruises. But we know, there's 97% of businesses are small businesses. And we know that across Ontario, that is not how it is for everyone. What hopeful words would you give to those entrepreneurs that are feeling disrupted and hopeless right now?
You're asking a really hard question. And, for the restaurant owner that's losing their business, as an example, or someone that works at a hair salon or whatever, I guess don't give up. I think somewhere, in our community, we've just got to continue to network with each other and reach out to each other and look for ways to help people, people helping people. I know we've turned to government. This is not a political discussion today. We need to lobby our governments. We need to talk to our friends and somehow network with each other. I think our society has been very supportive of helping each other. It's a very helpful environment. Our government's trying very hard to help people, but it's not easy. And I don't have an answer for the business owner. The restaurant owner is an example, which is probably the best example of what do you do? How do you solve that problem? It's just not easy, other than I think we need to be empathic and encouraging and somehow supportive as best we can. But that's a tough question you're asking.
I know. I don't come with the easy ones. And Scott, you might not have that answer for the small business owner, but I think you actually have an answer for all of us. And that's how we can respond. And I think what I hear you saying is for us to be creating generous space, to be offering our networks, to being encouraging to others. So more, what can we do as opposed to what they can do? So I thank you for that point.
Yeah, and just to follow up, you go back to the restaurant and, rather than give them a 15% tip, give them 25. And be thankful that they're there, that they can serve you. And I know that's a lot to ask, but that's a way just to create some generosity to help these people get back up and running, is we can help them by supporting them.
Generosity and an acknowledgement of their pain. John, this next question is for you, and I always like to put in a weighty one specifically for you, but what is the theology of hope?
It's been said that to be human is to be involved in hopefulness at some level. It's human beings who hope. And because human beings are directed towards hope, there will be all sorts of varieties of hope. We can say, for example, let's hope in economics and that it'll bring us happiness. Or maybe we can hope in science to solve our problems, or in politics to bring us peace. Or maybe technology to bring us to a better future. These are the kinds of things that we might hope for. But these are secular versions of hope. They rest on elements in our finite world, whether it's nature or whether it's history, or it may be human ingenuity that they rest on. The evidence suggests that these solutions overall don't work. Hope soon dissolves, and the successes we thought would come never arrive. Christian hope is grounded elsewhere. It's grounded in the action of God. It's grounded in a transcendent reality, and that's how it's different. So those other secular hopes are appropriate in their context, but it's not what we really need. It's not history or nature or humanity, but it's a story that we have found in the divine in intersection into the human situation. God has broken into history. That's the Jesus story. So hope is characterized by an engaged imagination, I think. And that imagination needs to be informed and shaped by the biblical story. It's the realization that we are not, after all, trapped in our limited little worlds. That's a risk we all run. We feel trapped in our world and we don't know how to get out. Hope is an exercise in envisioning expanded possibilities to see something beyond, freeing us from the tyranny of immediate circumstances. That can happen during the pandemic. We get so tyrannized by our immediate circumstances, we can't see beyond them. Hope does not deny or ignore the tragedies of life nor its difficulties, but rather it recognizes that there is more to all this than meets the eye. Hope does rest, a theology of hope, rests on a sense of the transcendent. We're invited into God's future, of which resurrection is both a sign and a pledge. It's a promise that all things will be made new.
Hope does not deny the tragedy and suffering, and God has broken into history.
Yes.
Tim, this next question is for you. Hope essentially is the inspiration for your sculptures. In fact, you have said your hope is as important as your clay. Where does your personal hope come from, Tim?
A pretty lofty place. I really do believe I'm doing God's will by creating my sculptures. And that's a big responsibility. And my hope also comes from the idea that if beautiful spiritual ideas are presented correctly, they can really benefit people. And so on the one hand, I have, this is God's will that I'm doing sculpture. On the other hand, that if I do it well, it can really, really move people and change people's lives. That's my big hopes. And blended together, that gives me the energy to do the sculptures I do obsessively.
I love that obsession, and I share in that obsession. I love that you've mentioned that it's God's will, right? God has called you to this as an artist, and that you want to move people. And I want to let you know, Tim, that I was deeply moved in 2014 when I received one of your replica sculptures of the homeless Jesus after doing some work with the Ottawa Mission. It moved me deeply. So you are achieving exactly what you set out to do. Scott, this next question is for you. Like many business leaders, you give hope to others through philanthropy, whether it's through your organization or as an individual. I know you're particularly interested in the Salvation Army Gateway and the Yonge Street Mission. What signs of hope have you seen through these frontline organizations during the pandemic?
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. Well, I think first of all, I was over at seeing Julian Williams at Yonge Street Mission 3 or 4 months ago, and we were involved in upgrading the computers in their literacy center. And first of all, when you get an opportunity to engage with people at the mission, and then we've also been involved with one of the food banks at Salvation Army. and the enthusiasm of the frontline workers. The other thing is just engaging with the donor base and raising some money. We've raised some money for both organizations through myself and through a matching program, and people are very generous, and our society has been very generous and very giving at this time. It's in our DNA, I think, to help people. It's part of, I would call, our Judeo-Christian heritage that most people that are not Christians anymore don't even realize that they're doing, but in the DNA of the culture has come a sense of trying to create equality and trying to help people. So it's hardwired into our culture, even though most people don't necessarily understand where it came from. That's where it's come from. Now, we may be losing it at some point in time, but right now it's still pretty strong. So I think we're pretty helpful in helping people that are struggling at this point in time. That's not to say we shouldn't keep going. Obviously, we got to keep going with it. But I get a lot of inspiration and encouragement myself, by being involved. It helps me a lot. So they say the more you give, the more you get.
I agree too. I think it gives us inspiration, and I think it gives us perspective and enables us not to live just so narrowly and tunnel visioned. I received, in response to your last question about how to encourage a business owner, we received a really poignant comment. So I just want to share that right now. To help small business become a secret Samaritan, give the owner, a worker, envelopes of cash. Many of us can afford to do that. So that's just another idea for us to all take. John, the next question is for you. For Christian, Resurrection Sunday is the ultimate symbol of hope. What does Resurrection Sunday mean to Christians around the world? Why does it matter?
Well, for resurrection to be meaningful, we need to be capable of being surprised. And we need to let go of a rather rigid view of the world, our rigid, predictable worlds. The empty tomb was not expected. So that Jesus rose from the dead is something that Christians believe, but more importantly, I think it's something that we are called to live. We're called to embody the patterns of the future promise that is expressed in the resurrection. So it's a powerful symbol, but it's a historical event. And as I say, it was not expected. The practice of resurrection will mean that life is infused with hope. I think that's at the heart of the Christian faith. We will always be imaginatively open to see not just things as they are, but also things as they might be. We'll be attuned to newness. I think that's, again, a Christian call, to be attuned to newness, redemptive possibilities, restorative possibilities, transformative possibilities. Knowing that there is brokenness in our lives and in our world is not the last word. I think that artistic work, and certainly what Tim has just been saying a moment ago, is one of the ways in which we can learn about newness. Artistry illustrates and manifests this newness. It's one way to express, it seems to me, the hopefulness that's found in the resurrection.
We're called to live the resurrection hope. We are called to be redemptive and restorative wherever we are.
Yeah. And transformative.
And transformative. Yeah. And transformative. Tim, you and I share a passion for the next generation. I was struck recently when we were chatting about how you hope your sculptures outside of a church building reach the most cynical youth. You think if there's something perhaps cool about that sculpture, it might inspire that young person to enter into a building which they often think is boring and irrelevant. How else can we give hope to the next generation?
Yeah, I think we are really at a challenging position right now, presenting spirituality to the future generation. I remember I just actually did a sculptures on Dante, and I went to my parents' library and I just picked out the Divine Comedy, started reading it. We don't have that access now. We're so cyber, we're so on the internet right now with Facebook and all this different media. It's hard to present messages out to people. We have to be, ironically, we have to kind of be like sound bites and visual bites, and that's what I do believe that we need more of. We need to take the little window we have and present a distilled, pure idea of what spirituality is in order for people to see it. And I do believe that the visual artwork within the church has always existed, and they knew this. And it's interesting because I was thinking about how many churches I know personally that are doing so much to help the poor, help the marginalized, and to bring up this hope into communities. But a lot of it's invisible. And I think that we need to bring out that awareness. We need to put a face to our faith so people can see it in this culture that's bombarded by people's demands for their attention. So more artwork, more beauty, authentic, real, to bring people in, to make people stop in their tracks for just a moment. If we could just get 1 minute of their time, that's a start.
More artwork, more beauty. The word that I really heard there was authentic. And I think that is one thing that really resonates with young people, is when we're authentic in all of our expressions. Scott, your 65th birthday was one to pause and ponder. It stirred you to reflect on your life lessons. In fact, these milestone occasions should cause us all to pause and ponder and reflect. What were the life lessons learned that you reflected on, or which ones do you want to share with us today, more cheekily?
Well, I think, Elena, you and I were talking in leading up to this, and I was given a surprise birthday party, and a number of my clients and friends and family were at this event. And as you know, I'm in the money management business, and I'm managing money for some chartered banks and trust companies and a lot of private capital. And with that comes a fiduciary responsibility to do a good job and take care of what you've been given. And at the time, and I've reflected on it, is the word respect. And I think I was taught as a child, it starts with respect for God. It's something that's missing in our society. Honor God, respect God, don't turn away from God. And there's a version of that in the Ten Commandments in terms of keeping the Sabbath a holy day. And I know don't want to get into theological of how we deal with that today, but there's a lack of respect. And then it permeates down: respect your parents, respect your teachers, respect the government, respect people in authority over you. And if you take the general sweep of that across our culture, we've lost so much respect for so many institutions, and we don't respect each other or take care of each other the way we need to. And so it's just something that's really hit me in the last few years, is that something that we've lost in our culture that we need to get back to. We're very angry with each other, and we're very upset, and there's a lot of anger and hurt and fighting and not listening. And we don't even respect each other the way we need to. There's a total loss of it. So that's something that's just resonated with me for the last few years. And I think it ties in with even what Tim's trying to do in terms of providing hope. Hope will come through respect.
Hope will come through respect by listening, by taking that space to listen, and really to love one another, right? To really
if we love each other, we're going to respect each other. We're going to listen, and the fighting has got to stop. We're not listening. Fox News and CNN don't listen to each other.
I would concur with that, Scott. There's not a lot of listening, just a lot of espousing ideas and opinions. John, art is one of those places where hope is expressed. It invites us out of the ordinary, whether it's through art, music, theater, and dance. It points us towards something more. What expressions have you seen during this season?
Well, I think there's a lot, much more than any one of us can take in. But certainly, some of the music communities have done virtual music, invited us to come and experience smaller concerts. There's the desire to communicate. We're relational beings, and we're using this particular technology to connect. Zoom has become very, very popular, but it's been very, very valuable for the arts as well, where people can read their poetry, where a grandchild can dance for the grandparent and bring them joy, and on it goes. So I think also that art is hugely important because it's what we hold in common as humanity, our capacity to create and to enjoy, as Scott has been speaking about it, and of course the Timothy is doing it, to enjoy this creative product as well as the creative process. And it does inspire us, and I think embodies hope. I mean, it's very much at the heart of who we are as human beings, remembering that God is creator, and we are invited to follow through as co-creators as well, and to provide, I guess, expressions of and opportunities for people to feel hopeful.
To enjoy this creative process and product.
Yes.
Tim, you have been noted to say that time is currency. Time is currency. You simply do not know when something beautiful is going to appear in and amongst your clay. What advice would you give to others who are simply going from one meeting to the next via Zoom that might miss the beauty of the in-between?
Well, I'm basically a hermit living in my studio, but I think the fascinating thing about sculpture is you really encounter the God of surprises, and I think it's fascinating that some of my greatest art pieces came when I never expected it, and it's just like you mentioned the homeless Jesus. That was a time where it was probably 4 months since I've been to a big city, Toronto. And I eventually pulled myself out of my work resentfully to go to a meeting I had in Toronto. And it was when I was in Toronto, I saw a homeless person shrouded by a blanket. I don't know if it was a male or a female, but it hit me. It was an encounter, I believe, from God. I said to myself, I just saw Jesus. I was literally shaking. I'd seen this fragile human form underneath this blanket. And I went back to my studio and I sculpted the homeless Jesus, almost identical to how I saw that person, so other people could see the spiritual within the marginalized people. And I think that was a kind of a eureka moment for me. Because it made me realize that I have to be open to spiritual forces coming when I least expected, that could overpower the previous pieces of artwork I did and celebrate something new that I didn't plan out. A lot of times right in this room, I'll sit there and do sketches after sketches after sketches. But then you have the God of surprises that comes in and kind of determines the work for itself. And then you realize that you're just a tool, like St. Francis said, an instrument to God's peace. And that you are basically a tool for something spiritual to happen. And I think, it's great to say that about artwork, but I think it's in everyone's life. You have to be open to let that stuff come in that could be spiritual that you least expected. I could have went to Toronto and saw this and not give that time to let it express itself. I could have went back to my commission projects that I was doing and smolder that beauty and that opportunity that I believe was from God. I could have snuffed it out, but I kept it on. So in a sense, I think spiritually as a sculptor, you have to keep your spiritual candle always lit, have your radar on for when something might come to you, and you have to address it and not be afraid of spending the time to see where it leads. And I think that's an analogy with everything in life. We're living in a pandemic right now. And I mentioned Daunted, the Divine Comedy. I sculpted the 99 cantos just over this period of time. The fascinating thing about Dante was he wrote the Divine Comedy, which is considered one of the most beautiful poems in the history of Western civilization, after he was kicked out of Florence in exile. He lost everything in his life and he was booted out of Florence. And then he wrote the most beautiful epic poem ever. And I thought, as I'm sculpting this 700 years later, that if he wasn't disrupted in his regular life, he would have been a great politician, who knows, a poet that we probably never would have heard of. But that change, that disruption, that pandemic that he was experiencing created one of the most beautiful works of art in the world. So God of surprises, we might think we know where we're going, but God can actually bring some beauty if we're open to it.
So disruption is good.
Exactly.
We serve a God of mystery, and we're a society that we just love to plan things, right? One thing after another, after another, after another, and just for us to leave space for those Holy Spirit nudges. Scott, you are the chair of Crossings, an arts exhibition to launch during Lent 2022. What is it about this specific project that has inspired you to give so much of your time and resources to and propel all of us forward with you on this initiative?
Well, I'm just going to go back to what Tim just finished saying, because what he just talked about Dante and the inspiration of art and his best work when he was on a bit of a spiritual pandemic or whatever, and the inspiration that Tim got by coming to Toronto and seeing a homeless person is what's inspired me. Just listening to Tim today has inspired me, has renewed my enthusiasm. And I am the non-artist artist. I know nothing about how to create music or poetry or sculpting or painting or anything. But a few years ago, I ran across a professor at the University of Edmonton, David Goa, who talked about the spiritual amnesia that had come across our culture and how art in the communication of ideas through art could give hope to a future generation that can't see in any other way. And that's why I got involved. I met John Franklin and Imago along that journey over the past 15 years. And that's why I'm involved. We're going to create something creative for people to walk by in the city of Toronto that are not going to go in a church building, or not going to watch a certain TV show, but they're going to see something that hopefully is going to touch their heart. And so I think Tim said it all. I don't need to say any more. Tim, that was great what you just said. They're very inspiring, and it's so true. And I think that that's the inspiration for Crossings and for what we're trying to create in this art exhibit in Lent 2021. So hopefully all of the people that are listening today will go on our website and tune in about what we're up to. And we're looking for help and we're support and all kinds of ideas to catapult this forward. So thank you, Alana.
Thanks, Scott. And Lent 2022, not 2021.
Oh, sorry, 2022.
Yeah,
my mistake.
That's okay. John, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I will just say that what drew me to this is the power of this story of the Passion. Jesus' journey to the cross has all kinds of implications for the reality of our world, the realities that we face. And I think that as we revisit this story, that we can also be, what shall I say, freshly inspired and freshly instructed as to the importance of this story of Jesus. So to give it public profile in an urban context, and I might add a secular urban context like Toronto, is a wonderful challenge and I believe a wonderful opportunity. And as you've already alluded to this, Alana, but I think it will resonate greatly with the realities of the world in which we live at the moment. So that's why we're planning for 2022 to have this outdoor exhibit of the Stations of the Cross.
Gentlemen, I agree and concur with you both, and it's been a privilege to serve alongside you, Scott and John, as we plan together towards this beautiful public arts exhibition that is going to be accessible to all. Well, our time has come to an end. I'd like to just really express our heartfelt gratitude to the Canadian Bible Society for their support and partnership. I'd like to personally thank Imago for the privilege of collaborating for these last 3 sessions. I'd like to thank Live Meeting and Jane Toey, who's been helpful behind the scenes. And a heartfelt thanks to Lisa Kember, Liam Keenon, Deanne DeGraff, and Ryan Johnston for helping us with our brand and materials. And thanks to you, John, Scott, and Tim, for your insights today and helping us all move towards Resurrection Sunday in a hopeful spirit. This talk will be on both of our websites, and you can find it at www.imago/arts.org or www.intricity.ca. This does conclude our series, Beauty and Brokenness, A Journey to Easter, but I invite you to save the date for Intricity's summer series, where we examine different leadership topics on July 7th, 21st, and August 11th and 25th from 7:30 to 8:15. As well, I invite you to save the date for Crossings, a public arts exhibition during Lent 22, March 2nd to April 14th, and more information can be found at www.crossingstoronto.com. When you entered into the show this morning, you would have been privy to hear the music from Mike Jansen, his Lent album. And for those of you who are interested in purchasing his CD, you can find that at www.mikejansen.ca. And for those who are interested in exploring Tim's sculptures, Tim, what is the right web address for that? Because I know it's recently changed. How could people access those sculptures?
Sorry, the easiest way is just to Google me. If you can spell my last name, you'll find tons of different news stories about my recent projects. So yeah, it's very easy to get to.
Lovely. Okay, thank you, Tim. Well, friends, the hope we tend to gravitate towards often is that more triumphant hope. Yet the hope we really need is the one that goes through that portal of suffering, from that brokenness to beauty, from Good Friday to Resurrection Sunday. We wish you all a blessed, hope-filled Easter.